I am Miquel from Menerga Spain, CEO and engineer, and I would like to thank you very much for the organization to invite me here. And I will talk about the case of study, which is a case that happens to me maybe 10 years ago. So, and I have seen a lot of things I will talk about that is still in the future on the pipelines of different manufacturers. And this started like this. It was 10 years ago when we started in a big bank in Spain, and with a big consultant wanted to make a very big data center. And his mind the goal at that time was to reduce the PUE. At that time, the PUE was around 3 or 4, and the goal was to arrive to 1.5, which is a long time ago. So we have many stories, viabilities, over doubts, because everybody does the data center the same way all the time. So new technology appears, and of course new manufacturers in the market, because the typical ones didn't have this technology at that time. And we have to also talk about control strategy, as we have mentioned before. And of course this needs a tailor-made solution, and with a lot of teamwork between all the people involved in the project. So the story was clear. That was the beginning of the free cooling. At that time we started with free cooling, and the idea was to use the outside air, which is colder than the inside air, to make it as to use this energy to cool down the data center load. And of course, one first idea is to use the direct free cooling. Direct free cooling is very easy. You open the window and the fresh air coming in. So this is very simple. Using a machine like this is simple. You have a return air from 28, for example, and you have very low temperature outside. So you mix the temperatures, and you have the right temperature of 17 in this case, to attain the right temperature, and no compressor unit. When the temperature outside is 22, is upper than 17, then you take, for example, 22, and you take the outside air, and you have to cool this outside air, and you condense with the return air for the condenser. And then when your temperature is higher than the return air with a high temperature, you use the typical recirculation when you have the return air cool down, and you use the outside air for condension. And this is very simple and really cheap. And you can do it with the air handling unit, or you can do it with cracks connected to the outside air. And you have free cooling during a lot of hours per year, and a very low potential with compressor. But they have some problems. Sometimes the typical problem is dust. A lot of dust and pollution came in, so a lot of filters you have to put in the direct. Also the moisture, humidity is very difficult to have the right point. And you have a lot of people running around, because the sensors has to be very good calibrated. Otherwise, you have problem with the stability of the system. Yeah, we have lower capex but higher opex. So is anything else in the market? So they think about the indirect free cooling. And what is this? It's the same. You have the outside air and the inside air, but you put a heat exchanger in the middle, and you use the outside air to refrigerate the inside air, but through a heat exchanger. So then you have no dust, you have moisture stability, and lower maintenance operation, because this is very stable at the end, but a higher capex, because the unit is more complicated. And somebody took the idea to there is a knowledge with a unit used for ventilation that can use heat recovery and adiabatic, evaporation system, and a compressor in the same unit. And this unit was used for ventilation with outside air and its house. But if you just change the pipes, you can use it as a recirculation unit. This side is returned to supply, and you cool it with the outside air. And you have a adiabatic and compressor inside. Then, but it is a special case of a data center. When you talk about data center, you are not talking about ventilation some hours a day. It's 24 hours, 365 days per year. So this is very important, the pressure drops. And just little pressure drops in the circuit is bigger consumption. So the thing is to reduce the pressure drop. So it has to be designed a new unit, thinking about limiting all the pressure drops in the circuit of the adiabatic and heat exchanger. And then what else you can do is put a better fans. At that time the AC fans started to work with 10,000 cubic meters. Before were too little, but at that time we started to be bigger. Now they are using, everybody uses the AC fans. And in partial loads are very efficient also. Of course, interesting rotary compressors, very efficient. And you can do several ones, or with digital scrolls, or variable speed is also, all ones are very good for these applications. And of course the adiabatic system, or a polypropylene system. And as you see here, even with high temperatures of 35, 33 degrees, and you can use the adiabatic, and I mean the secret of this is that you are able to use the energy from the data center to evaporate more water. You can see it. You can evaporate more water, and you are even in the worst occasion, you are 50% of the capacity is covered by the evaporating system. So the cooling capacity is only 50%. So this is very interesting for the efficiency. And this is the unit connected to ducts. And this very interesting because you don't need no chillers, no extra pipe, no anything. This is a complete block where everything is inside. And also is connected to the control system with its own control, and is receiving orders and from the sensors of every part of the data center to know if it has to go up and down with air or with temperatures, but with this in an holistic way. And you can see when the temperatures are very low, the system works only with air, and which is very interesting is that the outside air fan, it's only half of the capacity of the recirculating fans. So the air fan we are using, the energy we are using in the outside air is very low in comparison of the recirculation one. And when the temperature is very low, then you need very, very low capacity, and you control the supply air by the inverter of the fan in the outside air. When you need more power, you put water, and when you need more power, then you can start to use the compressor. And as you know, in the maximum capacity is half and half of the system. Yeah, but you can use it with a adiabatic or without a adiabatic. This is an option. And if you don't use a adiabatic, it's cheaper, but you have some differences. At that time, it was started with a Kyoto cooling system with a wheel, a big wheel, and the first problem is that the fans has to be the same, otherwise the wheel is not stable, so you don't have this reduction. And of course you don't have the water to reduce the consume. And if you see how is you can see the white, sorry, the white is the recirculation fan, which is basically the same. The black is the outside and it's quite not, but also the compressors, the blue is very high. In the other case, you can see that the compressor has a big reduction, and so you don't have this peak, the different peak of energy entrance that you have with the system without the adiabatic. Okay. Then with this system you have two different cooling systems with 50% each one, and everything is integrated in the safe unit, so we have safety in operation. Raw requirement, outside volume air from 50% of the circulation, this is what I said before, and a small mounting area. This is a small mounting area, you will see, if you compare with the wheel is much bigger than this unit, but it's not a little unit, but you will see. And yeah, you have no influence of the outside air with the humidity and dust and the outdoor condition because it's completely separate. And all year operation without a great peak and lower electrical consumption through the year. So if you make the numbers for the whole year, we have a reduction of 30% of electrical demand, and yeah, of course, we are not magic, or the system is not magic. Something happens. What happens? We are evaporating water, so you are using water, and this could be a problem. But yeah, at that time, this was played in Santander, which is the north of Spain, which is a place where it rains a lot. People is making data or constructing data centers in Finlandia, in Scandinavia, where it's very cold outside, because you have this cold to cool down the data center. And but another opportunity is to use the water power from the rain, and this is what we were using at that point. Of course, you have to make a lot of numbers. You have to study the climate profile to see which is temperature and humidity, what happens with the system, and at the end the results is that for a supply return of 1734, 17 is very low, but at that time they were thinking about 17. Now are thinking more in 23 or 25. But you can see the ER of yearly average was 11.4. And with higher temperature, of course, 16, which is not bad, but not the compressor, it's the whole system. Because you have the compressor, you have the fans, everything is inside. And of course, then you have to construct it. There are many stories about that. The units were not so little, and it was very interesting to see how people is working without looking what they are doing and with the cranes. And finally, they had the little units on site. They were 18 like this in the 9 IT rooms. Okay, and you can see how it works. It's the outside air. Sorry, the recirculation air is coming like this, and that part you can imagine. Yeah. And you have the fresh air coming in, crossing the heat exchanger, the adiabatic, and the condenser. You see here there are more fans, and there are more fans because, of course, the bank, of course, the data centers managers, they want security. So they say, okay, you say you only need 50% of the compressors, but I want to have 100% of compressors just in case you don't have water. So you have to be able to produce 100% of power without water, and this is why we have more compressors and fans there. But really, the outside fans are working very low. And then this is a real photo of the. You can see here the ER at that time was 13. The outside temperature was 13 also, so it's not very complicated. But we have is around what was calculated. And you see the data center is in like this. The units are connected to the outside air and the inside pipe ducts to the -1 and 2 floors where the IT room was. And this is and at that time it was the consultant think that it was better to close the hot island. Probably most of you will think it's better the cold one. Sometimes the hot one, is not. It doesn't matter. But probably at that time we were thinking that as high is the temperature, return temperature, as far you can use the free cooling. So if you close the hot ice, it's easier to have more temperature in the return. This is why we did it like this. And also it's very important to work with IT people and be sure that then when they get into the data center, they close all the holes and avoid bypasses and avoid that the air, when it comes into the IT room, it goes without doing nothing, just from the supply to the return. So it's important to have all the holes closed and not have recirculation and not have bypass. But this is not our job, but the job from people inside the IT rooms. Of course, it's also interesting that you can use this system in combination of gas extinguisher system because it's always the same air, so it's not interrupting the system. And for the future and present, the thing is that these systems can be improved into better or bigger solutions, taking in account that it can be installed in places where you have very low temperatures or very high temperatures. If you have very low temperatures, you can use the heat of the data center to preheat the air coming in, because if you have minus 20 or minus 15, you can freeze the entrance of the heat exchanger, and that is not good. So you can preheat the air from the entrance with the heat of the data center, and then you have the perfect temperature to get in. And of course, if the temperatures are very high, then you have to think about maybe extra surface of condensers. The surface we have when the standard surface is too low, so we have to put more surface for coolers, and more if you think of 100% of capacity without water. So this is it could be the case. And at the end, you have other combinations. If this system could also be installed in the northern parts, within maybe Norway or Finland or Netherlands, where the outside temperature is not so high, then you don't need compressors. Your compressor is the adiabatic system. So you have also recirculation, and as the beginning I was explaining, the heat is going out is stored with the adiabatic only. And if you can combine with direct free cooling if it's necessary, taking account of the filters and etc. we have said before, or a combination of both, which is direct and indirect, but basically using the right temperature for supply, and you use the adiabatic only for cooling, and no compressors is necessary. Okay. This is what was my experience.